Hey there, welcome to Game Dev Game Love, a Game Dev London podcast mini-series where I talk to a fellow game developer about a game they really love and we discuss it in a game developer's point of view. I'm your host Quang from Asobi Tech, and today our game developer guest is...
Mark Backler from Sketchbook Games.
That's great to have you, Mark. Can you tell us a little bit about your game development history?
Sure, so I started off working at Electronic Arts on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix as a level integrator, so kind of taking lots of different content and putting it all into the game and scripting the game's missions. Then I went to Lionhead Studios where I worked as a scripter on Fable 2, which was really great fun, and then I was at Kuju Knickknack as a game designer and sort of working on a variety of different children's games. Then I went back to Lionhead, worked on Milo and Kate and Fable the Journey, and then I went to Sony very briefly, and then was a lead game designer at Marmalade Game Studios, working on lots of different Hasbro mobile titles. And then I founded my own studio, Sketchbook Games, after that. We've recently released Lost Words Beyond the Page on Google Stadia, so it's a atmospheric narrative puzzler, half set in the pages of a diary and half set in a fantasy world, and sees players moving words around to solve different puzzles.
Oh, that's quite the history. Nice stuff. So what's the game you've chosen today to highlight?
Goldeneye, like one of my favourite ever games.
That's a great game. I know many people have memories of being in their homes with their friends, playing 4-player death matches on that.
Definitely, yeah. I dread to think how many hours I've spent playing the multiplayer, and Perfect Dark actually had a counter, so you can see, and it was, we were talking number of days rather than hours that we'd spent on that, and that was even only on like certain copies, because you would all go around different friends' houses and different copies would be used, and GoldenEye, so much time spent. Happy hours on the multiplayer with groups of friends. It's great.
Did you have your own specific controller? If you did, what color was it?
So I had a blue controller that I think was a birthday present, and I would save that and only like break it out for special occasions. But then one of my friends was, and I think this is good general life advice of don't keep all the special thing. You might as well just use it and make the most of it and enjoy it rather than holding on to. I think I saw rather poignant advice from someone. She was. Her mother had passed away, and she was going through her mum's stuff, and she was saying there were so many boxes of things of like 4 best and shoes and items of clothing, and they were like hardly used. So she thought, actually we should use all our best stuff. So I did take that up and break out the blue controller all the time and use that lots. And yes, that was my classic.
So we're looking at what year are we talking about for GoldenEye? Was it
98, I think it was released in. Which I think,
98,
I think it was good times for video games. There was lots of really amazing titles being released around. I think Half-Life, the original, was kind of about then. And should say this is obviously GoldenEye 64 for the N64, because then it did get remade, and people have done kind of remasters online and things. So this was kind of the original, and seemed to come out of the blue as well, because it was quite a while after the film, and I've kind of read up a bit over the years on GoldenEye history, and some of it, it just sounds kind of mad, because it was like Rare looked into making GoldenEye, and then they were like, actually, it's going to be tricky with a Bond license, and they decided they wanted to do other stuff. But then Martin Hollis, who was quite young at the time, I think he was like maybe 23, something like that, and he was just like looked at it and said, I'd really like to make that, and went to his boss and was like, I'd like a team of people and I'll make a Goldeneye game. And they're like, sure, go for it. And then they made this like phenomenal masterpiece that we're still talking about all these years later. And Martin Hollis was kind of many different roles on it. I think he was like lead designer, and he was kind of the main producer. And then his background was in programming. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know if he was a programmer or lead programmer, but yeah, and he didn't seem to have much experience in like leading a team like this, and then to just go and blow it out the park like that and make Goldeneye is crazy. And then the fact that the multiplayer was kind of apparently just like thrown in there at the end in the last kind of couple of months, and I think might have been like Mario Kart or something had done very well, and so they'd kind of got feedback from Nintendo that they really, really, really wanted a multiplayer mode. So they're like, okay, well, we'll see what we can do, and then just to have got it so right in such a short space of time is unbelievable. Like, it's mad.
Yeah. So as I understand it, Martin Hollis had worked on Killer Instinct at the time. That was the only title he had worked on, and then they wanted to work on Goldeneye, and the team he had was literally a team of newbies. None of them had made a game before that, and Martin was the only one who had any experience.
Wow.
I believe it was a small team of 8 or 9 people overall, and yeah, I understand the game got delayed constantly. Originally they wanted to release it with the movie, that got delayed. Then they wanted to release it with the VHS release, that got delayed. But I feel the delays in development were worth it. See.
Absolutely, yeah. That makes me feel better to know that it got delayed and it wasn't just smooth sailing. They weren't just like, I'll lead a team and then, whoa, there you go, Goldeneye.
Well, it comes back to that saying that Miyamoto says that, you know, a rushed game will always be bad forever, but a delayed game would be bad.
It's forever good, isn't it?
Really badly.
Yeah, it's like a game on time. Can be rushed and bad, but a delayed game is eventually good. And definitely
Like
wise words.
So, what are some of your favourite design choices in GoldenEye?
I guess I like that there's the sort of secondary objectives, like optional things that you can do. And then that you get extra objectives on the harder difficulties as well. I think that's a really nice touch. So it's not just kind of for the difficulty mode saying, oh, you know, enemies have twice the health and double the accuracy or something. It's kind of actually you've got to go and do extra things. So it kind of gives you extra gameplay. So there's even more replayability of, you know, you go through and you complete it on normal, but then you want to, when you've done that, you want to go through and complete it all on 00 and do the extra objectives, and that it's got lots of different kind of secrets and unlockable things, and the sort of extra characters in the multiplayer that you can get, and like the kind of secret levels to unlock, and all that kind of additional content that at the time when the internet was in its infancy, I guess, and so it was still sort of, you would find out about games from print magazines and talking to your friends, and so all these things were just kind of legends, and you hear this thing and then you go out and try it and it's like, oh, that actually works, and you can get all these cool secrets and everything. And then the cheat mode, unlocking stuff for that was really was a nice touch. And I remember trying to get I think it was the invincibility cheat, which was super hard to get because you had to go through the facility level in like 1 or 2 minutes or something. So to physically do that, like, you had to have Dr. Doak appear at a certain position, and it was like random chance whether he'd be there, so you'd have to keep running through hoping everything goes well. Not even, you don't get time to like stop and shoot. Like, you just have to kind of shoot as you're running, and then sometimes just ignore people and strafe around and hope they don't kill you. And and so then when Dr. Doke is in the right location, which is, I don't know, 1 in 5 times or something, you've then got to hope everything else goes right and you power through. So and then when you finally get it, it feels really good to have kind of to work so hard and achieved that. And it's just so many things in the game seem superbly designed. And the aiming mode was really nice when you got the kind of free aim of the gun, which I hadn't really seen in other games at that point. I don't know if they were the first, or it might have been others.
Definitely one of the first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know for me, Goldeneye was one of the first, if not the first game to have dual wielding pistols. Usually you would pick up one game, and obviously FPSs were very much a PC based thing, so there weren't so many on the console. I think Two Rock obviously came out roughly before that, but then Goldeneye came along and it gave you 2 pistols you could pick up and then shoot them off as well.
And it had lots of different control schemes as well. It's very good from an accessibility point of view, but you could try all sorts of mad things, like you could have 2 controllers as well, so you could control one gun on each control. And that was one thing with the N64 controller, with the trigger on the back. It was kind of quite well set up for shooting games, really.
That's definitely something the N64 pioneered with its weird 3-prong controller. People were like, what is this? I've got this prong and this prong. But once you work out that you can hold it in 2 different ways, one for the analog and one for the digital side, it opens so much. And it said the trigger fire button was like, who did that? Like, there's no other controller that had a trigger button on it, and for it to be firing a gun, it made perfect sense. As you said, saying before, the 4-player multiplayer was added very late in development. I understand Nintendo asked them to put it in, and they worked tirelessly they put a lot of playtesting into it, and to make this game run well enough for 4 players to play at the same time, I think it's incredible. The N64 at the time was a relatively powerful machine, but it's, by today's standards, it's tiny. The memory is, the RAM is tiny, the capacity is tiny. The CPU is not very powerful at all, but they've managed to cram all this into this cartridge and make it work, which is incredible. What did you find about the 4-player mode that you enjoyed the most?
I guess the main thing is just kind of the competitive element with your friends. Back then it was always good fun, and it's just so well made. The levels are really interesting, and sometimes as well, like, we would make up our own game modes or come up with our own rules and things. Me and my friend John would have a game called The Prisoner, so we did that on the bunker level, and basically you had to escort the other person from the prison cell to the helipad, and then they had to try and escape, and so you sort of had them at gunpoint, and you would like walk forwards and go over there, and then they, at the best possible moment, they had to try and leg it off and go around the maze of the bunker, or attack you with the karate chop. And the different modes as well kind of gave it a lot of life, because sometimes you would have like a proximity mine game when everyone's kind of throwing them everywhere, and then when the level's been mined, you kind of you can't really move without exploding, so you just have to really carefully look around. But then people have like put them on the back of beams, so there's no way you can possibly see them from that direction. And even a single game mode like that has kind of a lot of life to it, and you can kind of play around lots. But then there's the sort of different weapon mode settings, and like License to Kill, when it's one shot kills, and so that it felt like quite I guess you could argue, well, yeah, everyone seems to have their different preferences, and in one circle of friends, we would always play on License to Kill, and then with another group of friends, they would have health on, but both sides would think, this is the true skillful way, because with License to Kill, it's like, well, you've got to make sure you're accurate and you get that shot, and it's getting in there first, so that's the skill. But then other people say, but if you can just get one hit in quickly, then that could be kind of luck, and the skill is more when you've got health and making sure you're using all the right tactics to get their health down. But my personal preference was always License to Kill, and that was what we played most. And funnily enough, though, like the club. Like one of the worst weapons in the game, and on License to Kill, when you do have body armor, you can get shot with a club and it not kill you sometimes, even though it's meant to be. But yeah, that's how bad the club is, and yeah, I guess everyone, you've got your favorite weapon sets, and like the RCP-90 was really good gun on the automatics set, so. Yeah, and each of them kind of feels really different, like whichever set you go for. And pistols, it's a slower game, and it kind of changes the mechanics and the strategies of the game, really based on what weapons you've got. And you've got the explosive weapons and other types of mines and things, as well as rockets. So there's quite a lot of variety just in the choice of that. And then other kind of more unique modes like golden gun, so one person gets the golden gun that can kill in one shot, but everyone else has health, and the people team up to try and stop them, or are you all sort of out for yourselves? And
it's definitely, there's a wealth of variety in the game, in the configuration of the settings. Like also all the characters, there's a whole thing about Objob being the small character, and whether you were allowed to use Objob or not, because obviously hitboxes are smaller. Obviously all the different weapons, as you said, all the different levels, and through that there was just so many ways to play the game. And if there's 4 of you playing it, or even more of you just take turns playing it. And I remember some of our sessions lasting actually literally days. Some of us would take naps and then get up, and then we'll swap over and we'll play more. And it was just a wonderful local multiplayer game to play.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we would have sleepovers and spend hours playing it. And one of my friends actually, him and his brother made a setup when they had 4 TVs, and they got like paper and card and tape and taped over to prevent any screen watching. So they'd all have like the screens different directions, and and run it through all the TVs. So there was no screen cheating. Although I guess that's partly for some people, like being able to, you can look at their screen, but they can look at yours, and so you all have that. And I was at one sleepover once when I can't remember what sort of game type it was or anything, but I think it might have been a 1v1, and one of the guys playing had learnt all the spawn locations, and that's kind of hard. Well, the spawn order as well. So the guy he was playing didn't know the game so well, and so he went and killed him, and then he knew where he was going to spawn next, so he ran there, killed him there, and then ran. So it was a bit of a farce, but that's one I'd played it a lot. I didn't even realise that there was an order like that, and he'd gone through and learned. So and because we spent so much time playing the game, you do pick up all these different quirks and the elements of it, and even kind of their imperfections. They're sort of brilliant in their own right, of like the way there's no crawl animation, just when you crouch down you've got like the knee skating thing, so they just slide along the floor.
But yeah, obviously these are things they did to because the multiplayer came in so late, they realized all the things you can do, you have to animate from a third person, because originally if it was just a 1-player game, you wouldn't have to animate him crawling. But then they realized, oh wait, but if player 1 and player can see player 2 and player 2 is crawling, then you need to do that. So they did the best they can, I guess.
It's the funny thing about design,
this comes
isn't
down
it?
to game development, where features versus time. Time was always a big element. Obviously, they've already delayed the game twice already. What sort of things did you put in the game? Is there anything in the game that you feel like could have used more time and more time to make it better?
I don't know, really. I guess, maybe that is one example of you kind of might have expected they would have an animation there, but then it's like I say, it's you kind of fall in love with it, and actually like to say, oh yeah, they should have done it. It's like, I think it works. It's fine, it's a nice little idiosyncrasy, and so the game is what it is, and to go and look back and it's very hard to say like, oh, I think it should have been like this, because I guess when you're so used to it, you kind of you just like accept it for what it is, and I guess it was in the golden era of when you shipped a game and that was it, you put it on the cart, and now like while it does have its benefits, the kind of updating culture does have its drawbacks as well, of kind of means we can get a bit lazier, and we can ship a game that isn't finished and be working on stuff that we'll try and patch for day one but might not be ready, and maybe it's later, and even then you're still finding new stuff and then patch it, whereas here it was like, you had to make sure it was right because you got one shot, and with updates as well, you've got big downloads for players often, so it can be frustrating of you go and sit down on your PS4 and you've got 1 hour to play a game, and then it ends up taking 1 hour of console and game updates, and
so if we're looking at Goldeneye through today's lens, obviously FPS games are all over the place now. It's a genre in itself. Back then, I guess most FPSs were Doom clones, as it were. And now, FPSs are everywhere. Looking back at N64's GoldenEye, how do you feel it fares now? I know for me, the frame rate doesn't hold up at all. But back then, frame rates weren't really a thing.
I never really remember kind of noticing the frame rate. The only thing is when on I guess single or multiplayer, if you fire loads of rockets or blow up loads of mines and you get loads of smoke, it kind of becomes like a slideshow because the frame rate goes so bad. But then you got it feels like you understand, well, as a player, like I've deliberately made loads and loads of smoke, and it slowed things down, and it's like that's kind of, it just makes sense. And I remember thinking like at the time, I can't imagine how graphics can get any better than this, and then it's quite laughable to look back, and it doesn't hold up by today's standards, and I think certain games can fare better over time. So perhaps like Mario 64 or Banjo or something, when they're more stylized, they kind of they might hold up a bit better. Whereas when GoldenEye was kind of fairly realistic style graphics, and then you just like, you look at the people at the time and you're like, they're people, they're just look, they animate, and then you look back now and they've got like blocky hands and like square heads, and and then because Half-Life came out not too long afterwards, I think, and the weapons in that were kind of even higher res, and and kind of showed the graphics can be better, but at the time it just kind of blew me away so much. And I do remember like a friend of my brother's, because my brother's 4 years older than me, one of his friends came around and brought GoldenEye around, and I got to kind of he gave me the cart, and I got to go upstairs and have a go on it for a while, and it was just like amazing to play a game like that, and all the different levels, and I guess because he was partway through, so they were all unlocked, so I could kind of try all these different levels. And I'd asked for it for my birthday, but my birthday was 14th of November, and it I guess it came out a little while before that, so this was kind of a preview, and so excited to be knowing that I would would be able to play it as much as I wanted later. And I think actually, because I was at secondary school at the time, and a whole load of my friends were really there was like two camps. There was the people who had Goldeneye and were talking about it all the time, and the people who didn't, who were fed up of all the people banging on about Goldeneye.
I know you were saying about the graphics being very limited, because I know the N64 has a very limited memory cache for textures. So the textures are tiny little things like postage stamps, which definitely wouldn't wash today. I know they talked about the hand animation. The reason you do a chop rather than a punch is because they couldn't model. It would take too long to model a fist. It's just easier to model an open hand, which is why they hold a gun like that as well, and their hands like this, and you do the karate chop. But obviously, this is due to limitations in the hardware at the time. Obviously, and then you say Half-Life came out afterwards, and Half-Life running on PCs had a bit more power. The 3D cards had just become a thing, and I wonder if GoldenEye hadn't come out during the N64's life. I wonder if it had come out a little bit later, maybe even in the GameCube's lifespan, how that would have been.
Yeah, it's tricky to tell, isn't it? And like visually, it wouldn't hold up so well. But then the gameplay and the ideas and stuff like are still good. So maybe it could have still done well. And I mean, like, I love how there's so many destructible elements, and kind of you can shoot out lights, and like, while I'm not sure it does make anything actually darker, because the lights were kind of in a big strip, when you do shoot it and then it goes from light to dark, like it kind of feels like it's made a difference. And you could blow up the like table lamps and computer monitors and desks, and so many things were destructible. So then, I mean, even today, some games like I think in the original Deus Ex, it was kind of a similar thing of, you could, loads of kind of destructible elements, and you could pick everything up and move it around and stuff. And then in the like Human Revolution, which was a really good game in its own right, but one of the things that have kind of changed is like the desk is just, everything's like glued down to it, and it's all indestructible, and so you can kind of try and shoot these things, but then it doesn't make a difference. And so it's weird to have been, this game all these years ago that did something that you feel like would set a benchmark for everything afterwards. But then even with all the technology and the time and the bigger teams and the bigger budgets and stuff, some of those things still don't feature as standard in games.
As you say, like, it sets up a benchmark. I know, obviously, they followed up with Perfect Dark, the Perfect Dark games, which I love to pieces. I actually played more Perfect Dark than I did play GoldenEye, and I have probably more memories and more nostalgia for Perfect Dark. But then they also came up with Time Splitters after that, and they became Free Radical, I believe, and went on to make other cool things. And you can see this progression in FPS games, taking what it's done, other games have done before it. And GoldenEye is definitely one of those games where it set the precedent for many, well, for console FPS for sure, I think. Before that, I don't know, I can't think of many console FPSs that were as revolutionary as GoldenEye. Did you play any other FPS games around that time?
I'm sure I did. I might struggle to remember what they are, but I definitely played Half-Life when that came out. Then our PC was not the best, but I think we'd upgraded the graphics cards to try and help out, which did make a difference. And I did have Turok, and Turok 2, so played them. So they were other FPSs, and I'm sure there was probably quite a few different ones at the time. But GoldenEye just especially stood out, and I did love Perfect Dark and played that loads as well. But for me, I guess even though kind of Perfect Dark turned everything up to 11, like GoldenEye still has a special place in my heart, and I would say I liked it even more. Maybe the certain time or something. But yeah, we did put in lots of time into Perfect Dark as well. And I've recently been reading James Batchelor's article on gamesindustry.biz about the making of Perfect Dark, and I think I'm about halfway through that at the moment. And yeah, so it's sort of interesting to hear all the different facts about that, and how they wanted to kind of improve on every aspect that they could, and having bots in that was quite good, wasn't it? So even if there was only a couple of you could still have different types of multiplayer games and stuff.
From a game developer's point of view, if you were working on Goldeneye at the time, what would you feel you would have added to it or changed, or what would you do with it?
I don't know, like I say, with the kind of it being difficult to go back and look and say what things you should change. I feel like if I was working on it, I'd have just messed it up. It seems like it's this thing, and it's perfect, and they did this incredible job to get it done and out, and have such an inexperienced team, and so it's that is a hard question, because if you were to go back and if you were to be working on one area of that, then that means that the person who did an incredible job would not be working on it. But I guess it would be fun to be doing design with the multiplayer, and be kind of testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't, and sort of iterating on things with that, and trying out different modes. Because I think it's one thing with game testing, people often think is like an amazing job of getting to play games all day, but actually it's usually a very broken game and not the kind of game you would choose, and there's only a few instances when it's really awesome fun like people think, and testing a multiplayer game is kind of that sort of thing. So doing design on the multiplayer side of things, and getting to balance stuff and work with people and have player feedback and see what they're loving or what isn't working so well would definitely be a cool area to have worked on.
So I guess I understand it when the very first time they showed it at Nintendo show in Japan. It was still a on rails shooter, because originally it was meant to be very similar to Virtual Cop, and in that way. But the response they got was people thought it was an FPS game, and they were like, "Oh, maybe we should make an FPS game." And then, as obviously later on, they brought in the multiplayer aspect of it. I guess if they had decided to make a multiplayer game much earlier on, they would have had more time to make that side of it a better thing. I guess nowadays you have to balance the one-player campaign and the multiplayer campaign together, and some games definitely lean heavier on the multiplayer than they do on the one-player. My memories of GoldenEye is the one-player campaign is excellent. It's definitely where the meat of the game is, but the longevity is in the multiplayer. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate, and I guess it's people's kind of own personal preference too, because sometimes you might buy a game that has a really amazing single player and then not play that at all. Like, people have been talking about The Last of Us multiplayer, which I kind of didn't really give a second thought to, but I was reading an article about that recently, of saying there's still a vibrant community kind of playing that, and some people might pick it up and play that for the multiplayer, and not even play through the single player, which is an amazing single player game. So that it seems kind of madness to miss out on that, but for some people they're not really into that, and they care about the competitive element and playing with their friends, and so even like Half-Life and stuff, lots of people kind of had Half-Life 4 having the Counter-Strike as a mod, but might never play Half-Life as the game, and so I think lots of probably lots of people who didn't own it played the multiplayer lots around other friends' houses, and never played the single player. But I do really like my single player games, and I like story based games, and also it kind of feels satisfying to go through and complete a game. It feels like you've kind of ticked something off your list and accomplished something, whereas when you're playing a multiplayer game you can just put infinite hours into it, but yeah, it's definitely a big important kind of community side to games these days, and multiplayer kind of integrates really, well, is a big core part of that. And so yeah, I guess that's why you get games like Titanfall and stuff when it's like all about the multiplayer. And I think in the sequel maybe did they put in a single player for that, but in the first one I think there was like no single player at all. And yeah, Battlefield I think was one when it kind of the main focus was multiplayer, but then over time they did kind of put in a bit more focus on the single player. And Call of Duty was kind of, I guess, maybe a fair balance, but a lot of effort does go into the single player, and it's really well kind of scripted and crafted, and it's always pushing boundaries and stuff. So yeah, they've done a great job with those. Like Modern Warfare had some amazing cinematic moments and kind of story beats that I really wasn't expecting. Kind of quite dramatic and profound and moving bits, and like because you've got lots of different characters and some of them make it and some of them don't, so it's quite a weird thing in a game when you're expecting you're like, oh, I know what's going to happen. Or like one time you're taken prisoner and you're thinking, well, how am I going to get out? Am I going to find a key from over here? Like Goldeneye had an excellent moment with your watch and the magnet, and figuring that out. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to be able to get out somehow. And so you're looking for these things. But in Call of Duty, it was like, you get dragged out and you're thinking, who's going to save me? What's going to happen? What do I need to do? And then they're like pointing a gun at you and you're like, oh, actually maybe I'm not going to get out of this. And so all these kind of really unique and different and unexpected moments. But then Call of Duty has the multiplayer that they put a lot of focus into, and has so much longevity and is one of the most played games. And dread to think how many hours people have put in total to playing that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting the balance between them.
Would you say the watch part in Goldeneye is your favourite part of the level design, or is there something else that really stands out in your memory?
That's a nice touch, I guess, and it's a good layout of the level. I do really like the dam level, I guess, the first one. It's kind of a good introduction, and kind of you've got the different elements, and you've got an underground section, and then when you're kind of running along the top of the dam, and it's so iconic and from the film, and then part of the mission, or the end of the mission, being to bungee off the dam, and you've got the cutscene there. And then there's the kind of mysterious island off into the distance that I think they were making as it was going to be something, and there was going to be some way to reach it through a tunnel, and then they like cut that, but the island is still there, and the sniper rifle, so you can kind of you can see over to the island really well, and just the range on the sniper as well. They kind of hadn't played a game with a weapon like that in it before, and so it felt very different. And so there's kind of lots of different elements. I guess one of my favourite bits of it is that I kind of felt, because of those the kind of destructible scenery elements, and even the decals, like when you shoot any wall or floor or ceiling, it gets bullet holes on it, and so you could kind of draw little things on it, or and it felt like you had ownership of the space. Because in some games when it's like you shoot something and it doesn't react, or you're kind of funneled along, or it's just like everything seems very static. Like, whereas this, because you could destroy stuff, because you could make bullet holes on anything, like I felt like I owned the space, and I was really present and could do whatever I wanted there. And so that was a kind of a really powerful, unique, different feeling that even today you don't always get in every game.
Yeah, it definitely would help with the immersion and just having you in that game. And I know Goldeneye is one of the first games to have contextual shooting elements. You can shoot the head, shoot the hats, you can shoot the hands, and things like that, and they would respond as they needed to. I know in like something like Virtual Cop was what they originally were looking at. Virtual Cop also has that you can shoot them in the hands and feet and stuff. And they will flip through the air and however like that. And to have it in an FPS, it just, as you say, it just adds to that immersion of the game. And I think Goldeneye definitely does that really, really well.
Yeah, and it's got like the little blood patches, but it's not like too gratuitous. It's not blood going everywhere. It's just when you shoot someone in the arm, they get like a kind of a red mark there, and it kind of feels like it's quite. It fits quite well.
So yeah, I think from a design perspective, then it's that attention to detail, isn't it? It's having those things that just pull you in a little bit deeper. Like maybe you don't always notice them, but you feel them more than anything. And I think games that have that attention to detail are always a step above other games that don't bother with it.
I did think of one thing that maybe I would improve of the
Sure.
the tank level. While it was kind of good fun, it seemed to drag a little bit after a while. I think they kind of reused lots of the same scenery elements and stuff. So maybe that's one that could have used a bit of extra love. But I think it was tricky because you were going over, because you're in the tank and you're going over such a vast area, unlike the other levels when you're going around on foot and it's a bit more compact. But this one, being bigger, they had to kind of reuse stuff, and like you say, with all the memory constraints, I'm sure it was tricky. But
so do you think it's a matter of pacing or repetition, or how as a game designer, how do you make that better?
I guess they could have added some other kind of elements to it to help with the pacing and kind of add more interest, or shortened the level overall. I'm not sure if this is right, but I don't know if there's lots of different routes through it or anything. I can't remember if I ever got lost, but I definitely remember playing that one at that level and kind of feeling like it had dragged a bit. But then there's other ones like the surface level, which is kind of quite big and snowy, and you can still get lost, but that never seemed to kind of drag or anything, and had an excellent sort of atmosphere to it that just worked really well.
And have you played Goldeneye recently? When was the last time you played it?
So a friend of mine runs Bring Back Retro events, and I have played Goldeneye at one of those, and then I think that must have been the last time. He did a 24-hour live stream as well that we took part in, and so that was fun to kind of go and play lots of the old classic games, and I've still got my N64 up in my cupboard, so have to.
And how was that? Did it bring back memories? Did nostalgia hold up? Did the gameplay hold up? How was it?
It's definitely different playing it now, and I guess there's you can do some of the kind of remade stuff, because often it's like funny how in your memory you remember it one way, but then when you play it, like it does, your standards have now moved so far along with all the current generation of games, but then when you play a really good remake, it can be uncanny, because it's like, this is what it felt and looked like, and sort of back in the day, like with Halo and stuff, they've done quite a good job with the remakes of those, I think. And when you look back at Halo 1 or 2 now, and then it's like, wow, this does not, because sometimes you think with all the Halo games it was like, well, they didn't really make the graphics that much better, it always just looked like Halo, and then it's only when you look back and it's like, oh my god, actually, they did change stuff. It was just always felt quite like a gradual step, and so it's only when you look back at several games ago that it did make a difference. And I think in the remaster for that, you can kind of swap between the original and their like remade version, which is interesting to be able to do just like on the fly. That's a pretty cool cool feature for a remaster.
Okay, but thanks so much for talking to us today. It's been great to talk about Goldeneye. It's such a great game, such a legendary game. Is there anything you're working on at the moment that you would like to tell our audience about?
So currently we're working on the ports for Lost Words Beyond the Page, so we're going to be putting that on Steam, PS4, Xbox One and Switch. So looking to release those versions early next year, and then we're also sort of early stages of next project, just figuring out exactly what that should be, which is cool fun stage to be at.
It's a very exciting time then for you. And where can people find out more stuff about you and what you're working on?
So the website for Sketchbook is sketchbook.games, and the website for Lost Words is lostwordsgame.com, and we're also on Twitter for that with at lostwordsgame, and my personal Twitter is at Mark Backler.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So those of you who are listening, it would really help us out if you would do a subscribe or follow us on either YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Again, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for Mark for coming along. This has been Game Dev, Game Love, a podcast mini series for Game Dev London, and you stay awesome.